Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here, and welcome to the first episode in a very long series about Shadows of Brimstone. Um, this is the game from Flying Frog Productions that probably dwarfs all others in terms of stuff available. So much is available for this game that it is actually an overwhelming experience, and it can be kind of paralyzing to get into. So in this series, it's going to be a deep dive series like my Warhammer Quest series or my Secrets of the Lost Tomb series. So if you guys are into that kind of thing, I hope you enjoy this. We're not going to be doing any gameplay, but we are going to be taking a look at everything that we can. One thing to keep in mind is as we look at the individual expansions in this series, I won't always be able to show you each card from that expansion because a lot of it just gets mixed in with all of the other stuff, and to separate out everything would be a huge undertaking, and it would not be worth it. But I will show you important things from each expansion, the enemies. What we're going to do is today is just going to be this introduction and actually a buyer's guide, which I'm going to loop back around and talk about that in a minute. But we're going to talk about in future episodes how I got into the game, a look at the core sets, a look at the Otherworld expansions, a look at the Deluxe enemy expansions, some organizational tips. We're organizing. We'll look at some fan-made content with probably a focus on the Hex Crawl and the Travel Hazards books that people have made. I'll talk about some house rules because I do play this game with a lot of house rules. One is a pretty major house rule on exploration that makes the game more like Warhammer Quest. We'll look at chits and chits and chits because this game has so many chits, and so many of them are not used at all in the game except for like fan-made content. The frogs love throwing in tons of chits that are completely unnecessary. We'll take a look at some of the miniatures. At one time I had everything finished, but that is no longer the case. But I was dipping my miniatures and doing kind of an antiquing look. Some of them turned out okay, some of them didn't, but as more stuff came in, I started getting more and more behind, so I need to finish up that famous last words. We will revisit the Weird West genre because in between now and the time that I did my video on the Weird West genre, an entire series of weird Western fiction was released called Splatter Westerns. So lots of new stuff to look at there, and probably lots more as things go on. So today's main focus is going to be a buyer's guide. And the reason I'm doing that is twofold. One, I put out a question on the Dungeon Dive Patreon, like what would people want to see, and that was a common answer. People would like, who are thinking about getting into the game, would like to know where to start, and that is a very valid question considering how much is available here. And then when I was also talking on the Dungeon Dive Facebook group about doing video series on Shadows of Brimstone, multiple people just offered up like, hey, I would love to see a buyer's guide. So that's what I'm going to try to do today. I do not consider myself a consumer advocate channel. I am not an expert enough in really anything to give that kind of consumer advice. You know, I'm just, as I like to say, I'm just a guy that likes things. I don't claim to be an expert on anything. And it's also hard to do a buyer's guide because everybody has different financial needs and capabilities. Everybody has their own amount of discretionary income that they can spend. And so it's always difficult to say, oh, you need this, this, and this, when maybe you really don't. Some people can afford it, some people can't. So what I've done is I have tried to put together what I consider to be, a nice group of things to get and without breaking the bank. And for me, what that means without breaking the bank is about $500. I don't mean you have to spend all of that right up front, but if you were to spend about $500 on Shadows of Brimstone, you would have a absolute ton of amazing game at your disposal. $500 these days is about 3 large Kickstarter games. For some people, $500 is breaking the bank. And I don't mean any disrespect when I say that $500 isn't breaking the bank for me. It's just everybody has their own, they're comfortable with spending a certain amount of money. Now, most of my Shadows of Brimstone stuff I purchased like at retail, either at Amazon or through the Flying Frog web store. I did Kickstart at the very base level, the Forbidden Fortress stuff, but I actually prefer to buy my Shadows of Brimstone stuff piecemeal at retail when it becomes available, because when I got my Kickstarter for Forbidden Fortress, even though it was just a base pledge, it was too much to deal with at one time. It was overwhelming. So I like to get a little bit at a time and kind of work up to having, a respectable collection, that kind of thing. But I've tried to put together some things to keep in mind, and with the goal of spending about $500 over maybe 2 or 3 months or something. So the hardest thing to get in Shadows of Brimstone, and I don't mean like in terms of it being collectible, but just in terms of them being available, are the heroes. And it's really unfortunate. They have never released a hero expansion at like an official retail capacity. Yes, you can get them at conventions. You can get them at the web store through like promotional items or non-retail versions. However, unfortunately, a lot of the hero expansions that you can get that way are all resin minis, and I hate resin. I will not work with it. So I have a whole bunch of heroes that I've gotten that I don't have minis for because I just tossed the resin in a closet. I'm still looking for suitable supplements for those hero miniatures. The best way to get heroes is through the core sets, and right now there are 3 core sets. You have the City of the Ancients, Swamps of Death, and the Forbidden Fortress. So what I recommend to get a good variety of heroes and a good base to work with is to pick up 2 core sets for Shadows of Brimstone as kind of like your first purchase. Of those 3, I recommend getting Forbidden Fortress and Swamps of Death. City of the Ancients, I feel, is like kind of the most uninteresting, and it seems to be the world that they have focused the least on. It seems like there are more expansions and there are more interesting expansions for Swamps of Death and for Forbidden Fortress. I don't think the City of Ancients theme is very interesting, so that's why I don't recommend that expansion, that core set. But if you were to purchase the Forbidden Fortress and the Swamps of Death expansion, you would have, or core set, you would have 8 different heroes to choose from. You would have 2 main worlds, the mines and like the Forbidden Fortress, and then 2 other worlds. You would have the swamps and the belly of the beast. So you would have quite a bit of variety in the environments that you were going to be exploring. You would have good enemy variety. You would have lots of encounters, non-combat encounters, lots of gear, lots of loot, and you would also have a good variety of enemies from 2 completely different like settings, an Eastern setting and a Western setting that can be mixed together. So I think those 2 core sets would be a really good base. I've seen those anywhere from like $75 to $95 each. Next, I would pick one Otherworld Deluxe expansion and the Frontier Town expansion. Or you could wait for the Feudal Village expansion if you liked Forbidden Fortress. If you like the Eastern setting more, wait for the Feudal Village expansion. But the Frontier Town expansion is amazing. It adds so much variety to the things that you can do outside of the missions. So like Warhammer Quest, Shadows of Brimstone, you go into a dungeon and then you come out and then you travel to town. And the town is where you can go shopping and you can gamble. You have little adventures to and from to the towns. So The Frontier Town expansion, it adds like a deluxe town with an actual town map. It adds town traits and different kinds of towns that you can visit. It adds, you spend days in town and you have like town events. Highly recommended. And they are going to release the Eastern version of that soon. Hopefully this year will be the Feudal Village expansion. So then I would pick one Otherworld expansion. And these are like the deluxe expansions that add enemies, they add encounter cards, they add gear and loot, but none of them really add any heroes. So that's why the heroes are harder to get. You will get a lot to interact with those heroes from the core sets. For the Otherworld expansions, the only one I recommend staying away from is the Caverns of Cynder. It's really lackluster, and especially compared to the other ones, it just doesn't offer very much for what you pay. But the other expansions, I would just pick a theme that interests you. If you are into science fiction, get the Derelict Ship expansion. If you are into the post-apocalyptic theme, get the Blasted Waste expansion. If you are into Weird War II style, get the Tradera expansion. And if you are into the Eastern setting, get the Forest of the Dead expansion. There is one other expansion, and that is called the Temple of Shadows, and it is for Forbidden Fortress, and it's kind of a weird expansion. It's not its own other world. It kind of augments the Forbidden Fortress core set by adding cards that go into the decks in that core set, and it adds 4 heroes. So it is a smaller way to get 4 more heroes for the Eastern setting. So if the Eastern setting really appeals to you, you might just want to get the Forbidden Fortress core set and the Temple of Shadows deluxe expansion for that. But these deluxe Otherworld expansions go for about $50 to $70 each. I've seen the Frontier Town as low as I think around $35 on eBay. So something to keep in mind there. So after that, I would start rounding out your enemy lists with the deluxe enemy packs. These expansions are amazing. These are some of my favorite expansions in all of board games. They add so much variety and so many cool enemy encounters, because especially with the initial 2 core sets, the City of Ancients and the Swamp of Death, the enemies in those 2 sets are pretty basic. As the game developed, the enemies started getting more interesting. The enemies that come with the Forbidden Fortress core set are definitely more interesting. And these deluxe enemy packs create some amazing and interesting enemy encounters with all kinds of different powers, different themes. These tend to go from anywhere between 20 used and 40. And the ones that I recommend taking a look at are the Scafford Gang, the Undead Outlaws, the Serpent Men, the Flesh Stalker, and the Shadow Ninja sets. Really, really fun encounters, and they just add a lot of variety to the enemies. And that's something you are going to want to build on, is your enemy encounters, because there is a lot of combat in this game, and you want a good variety. And then you could probably offset those with a couple of the non-deluxe enemy packs, which with those you're just going to get the minis and the encounter cards. You're not going to get like a whole bunch of cool, weird things that make the enemies more interesting. After that, I would add like one big boss, and you could either get the Belial or the Ancient One. Both of those are available at retail. They both pose a pretty significant threat, and they both come with some interesting cards and things to add into your game. Those are about $35 each. And then I would take a look at the themed mission packs. Now, right now, the themed mission packs are only for the Western setting. They don't have any of them for Forbidden Fortress. Hopefully they will. These are kind of like little mini campaigns of like 5 missions, all focusing on a single threat, a single enemy that you can play through like a small campaign. The 2 that I recommend are the Cult of the Crimson Hand, just because that's such a Flying Frog Productions mainstay. It's in their stable. It's the thing that combines like so many of their games. and the Werewolf Feral Kin set. Again, those are about $35 each, and I'll start with just one. So as of today, February 14th, 2021, I added like the recommended amount of things just said to an Amazon cart, and before tax it came out to about $440 if you were to just spend everything at once, and that would be so much to get. After all of that, what I would start doing is browsing the Flying Frog Productions web store. Now they have sales about every 3 months on their web store, and they're pretty good sales. You can get some significant discounts. Basically just about every major holiday. They have a Christmas sale like Black Friday, Thanksgiving. They do have 4th of July sale. They have a President's Day sale that's going on right now. And you can get discounts on any of the expansions, the enemy expansions, the deluxe enemy expansions, and they have little card packs that you can buy. Now, every single Otherworld, every single environment and setting has card packs available for it that add to the encounters, they add to the gear, they add to the artifacts that you can find, they add themed encounters. And usually those are about $10 each for about, I think it's between 15 and 20 cards. But during their sales, you can get buy two, get one free. And so what I would do is, after you've decided which core sets you want to get, which deluxe Otherworld sets you want to get, go to the Flying Frog store and then start buying the little card supplements for those sets that you have. That's going to greatly increase the amount of random encounters and just all random stuff, the fun stuff about Shadows of Brimstone. And those are really fun to get and open. It's kind of like getting like magic booster packs. They're not boosters. You're going to get the same thing every time, but you kind of get that feeling. They will also have a lot of times white box editions. So those are like, you'll get all of the retail stuff, but you won't get retail packaging. And they will often sell those at a discount. Those are the things that they will often sell when they have everything ready, except it hasn't gone to the retail chain yet. Preview things that they will sell at Dice Fest and at other conventions. And you can usually find those at the website for less money than you would at retail. And so once you factor in all of that, you're looking at about $500. And that was the total that I wanted to keep things around to. So with that, you're going to have enough game for like 2 years if you played it all the time, probably, with all the different combinations of things that you could put together. One important thing to think about is you do have to assemble these minis. And these are not Games Workshop quality sculpts. So the minis can be very difficult to put together. I had a very difficult time with some of them. Another thing to think about is the 2 original core sets, the Swamps of Death and the City of Ancients. Those are being re-released soon, maybe now, maybe they already are in the revised editions. And those do come with better quality sculpted minis, something to think about. And we also have the new Kickstarter, the Shadows of Brimstone Adventures, coming up. I didn't back that. Again, I'm not going to ever back again a Shadows of Brimstone Kickstarter campaign. As things start hitting retail, and as long as I can look at them and investigate them and really make a informed decision on whether or not I want to add it to my collection, then I can just buy them at retail. I don't need to get a whole bunch of stuff right at once anymore. But yeah, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this buyer's guide. I will put kind of a condensed version in the description below, so you can kind of see what I recommend. And yeah, if you want to jump into Shadows of Brimstone, I hope this helped. And I hope the rest of this YouTube series will be interesting for you, and I hope you enjoy it. So we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.